Hello, and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History 25th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration. Our presenter, Dr. Tracie Locklear Beasley, will begin in just a moment, but we'd like to start with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter. We have many additional resources about the American Indian Heritage Celebration on our website. Visit NCAIHC.com. We thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation for helping to make this event possible. Please watch for a few slides honoring our sponsors. Now let's get started. We want to welcome Dr. Tracie Locklear Beasley. Dr. Locklear Beasley is a research assistant professor at North Carolina Central University and a member of the Lumbee and Coharie tribes. She is also a chemist of natural products. She works to assist communities seeking to reestablish healthy food traditions. Dr. Locklear Beasley, what are you going to share with us today?
Thank you so much for having me. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite plants, Sambucus canadensis, also known as Sambucus nigra canadensis. And this is one of probably the most well-known plants this time of year, but the least recognized plant. So today, we're going to be talking about how to identify Sambucus canadensis, that are known as elderberry, as well as I'm going to share with you one of my favorite medicinal recipes. So how you can make this medicinal syrup and have it at home for your friends and family. So before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about our program, the North Carolina Native American Ethnobotany Project. This is a project that I co-founded in 2017 with colleague and friend Jillian DeGiselle. She is a PhD ethnobotanist at North Carolina State University. And she and I have been working together for a number of years. She has done a lot of work with the Mayan people working in Mexico and Central America, as have I have worked in Central America doing my postdoc work when I was at University of Illinois at Chicago. And she and I wanted to take the opportunity to tell the world about some of the ethnobotanical uses of plants here in North Carolina. So we established the Native American Ethnobotany project, and we work with tribes within North Carolina, specifically the Halawa, the Wakamasuan, and the Coharie tribe, and we talk about plants and medicinal and cultural uses of these plants. Communities share with us their knowledge, and we have been very successful in helping to document that and share it within other communities, as well as here with the Museum of Natural History and you guys here at home. So I'm very happy to be here today and talking to you a little bit about the medicinal uses of elderberry. So first, let's start with an elderberry identification video. Hey everybody, Tracie Locklear here with the North Carolina Native American Ethnobotany Project, and I'm out here in the August summer heat to talk a little bit about elderberry. So I've been getting a lot of questions about how to identify elderberry. So elderberry is part of the plant family Adoxaceae, and not only is this plant part of North America, it's native in Europe, it's native in parts of Asia, as well as parts of Africa. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how to identify elderberry if you're out on a nature walk. Here I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, actually, and as you can see around me, we have a little bit of a stream. We're in the middle of the city, so you probably hear some cars behind me. But even here, even in the middle of the city, you can still find these little patches of nature around you. And here I was able to find a little patch of elderberry. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how, when you're out in nature, how to identify this beautiful plant. So the one thing I want to say about this plant is if you look at the base of it, you will see that the bark is gray and it is smooth. But once you get closer to it, you can see it has these little bumps to it. They're called lenticels, all right? And so that's one way that you can identify elderberry. The other is that the leaves are opposite each other. So here's one leaf, here's a tiny one here, and then here's the other one. And as you can see on the stem of the branch, it is directly opposite each other. And they are pinnately compound leaves. And what do I mean when I say pinnately compound? So normally when you see oak trees or maple trees, you see a one full broad leaf. And this, and for the elderberry, this is the full leaf. And so when I say pinnately compound, I mean that it has leaflets, small little leaves. So here you have the full leaf. So you have the petiole here, which is the part that attaches to the twig. And then you have the leaf blade. In this case, the leaf blade has tiny little leaflets. And you can see these side leaflets, all right? And then a leaflet at the top. So you have 6 side leaflets and a leaflet here at the top. And this is what we mean by pinnately compound leaf, okay? And if you notice, these little leaflets are also opposite each other, just like the leaves of the elderberry. And it's a little bit lighter green on the back side and darker green on the front side. This being August, normally elderberry is in season. You will see these beautiful, ripe, dark berries. But in this case, these berries have not ripened. And not only have they not ripened, but they have been picked clean by the birds. So this is the inflorescence of elderberry. This is where between April and June, mid-spring, you would find the most beautiful ivory-colored small flowers. These little green unripened berries kind of fall in like an umbel, and what this is called a cyme, okay? Because these flowers can be really big. They can be like 10 to 12 inches across in diameter, and they're really lacy and very beautiful. The flowers themselves are typically really small and white. They have 5 petals and 5 stamens. So on this branch, I was able to find some berries that are starting to ripen. So it's still not covered, by the way. So some of the berries have fallen off or been eaten by the birds, not sure which. But as you can see, you see some green berries and some berries that are starting to ripen. So they're red right now, but by early September, these berries will be black. And so generally, this entire inflorescence will be covered by black, beautiful berries. So places you would want to look for elderberry include open, sunny areas that are close to water. So it loves moist, rich soil. And so here we are next to a stream. You would find it growing in riverbanks. You would find it near lakes and ponds, also in the ditches next to farmland. Those are really great places to source out elderberry. So thank you again, and I'll talk to you next time. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was really hot that day, by the way. So before, switch my slides real quick. So before we start talking about making medicine and the medicinal uses of elderberry, there's one thing that I must say, that whenever you're out and you are foraging, it's super important that you make sure that you are 100% certain of any plant that you are harvesting. And the reason this is important is because there are deadly lookalikes. Even here in North Carolina, even here growing right next to elderberry, there are deadly lookalikes. And so it's very important that you you recognize and you've studied the plant that you plan on collecting. So I would say before you start harvesting anything, make sure that you know what it is that you're looking at. Also, make sure you're harvesting in clean areas because you're harvesting next to roadsides. Obviously, there's a lot of heavy metals that are being put out, so you really don't want to ingest that, not for yourself or for your family. And I would encourage, if you are collecting plants like elderberry, elderberry is one of those plants that's really easy to propagate. So consider propagating a plant that you find growing out in the wilderness and bringing it home. This is a really lovely plant to have at home. So before we start talking about the medicinal uses of elderberry, I want to hammer home the point about deadly lookalikes. And here I want to show you, I have a water hemlock here on the left and Queen Anne's lace on the right. Both of these grow at the same time as elderberry. They blossom at the same time. You can see both of these two plants have the same type of looking inflorescence at the top, the white flowers. However, they are very different. Even though they grow in the same area, they are very different. The water hemlock that you see on the left, it also has somewhat of a woody stem, but it's hollow and it's compartmentalized, so little hollow sections within the stem. It's purple. It has like a little purple stem there, very different from the grayish bark from the elderberry. And it also has those little purple little spots on it that are very similar to the lenticels that we talked about with the elderberry. On the right-hand side, the Queen Anne's lace, we also refer to this as wild carrot. So this plant is medicinal, but it's also edible. So the carrot part, the root, is used traditionally for food by Native Americans here in North Carolina, as well as all over the country. But this plant is it's a seasonal kind of plant. It has a hollow stem, but it's green. It will never turn woody. It's just a green kind of herb stem, and so it never turns hard or woody like you would see with the water hemlock and the elderberry. So those are two easy ways to tell these two plants apart from each other, as well as to differentiate these particular plants from elderberry. So now let's talk about medicinal uses of elderberry. And I want to start with the roots, stems, and leaves. And the reason why is because elderberry, like many other plants, do contain compounds that can be toxic. So this plant contains compounds called cyanoglycosides. And when ingested in heavy amounts, they can cause nausea, vomiting, dizziness, even in extreme cases, hallucination. However, medicinally, it has been used by Native American tribes here in North Carolina, as well as throughout the country, for different purposes. The roots are used by the Lumbee tribe, which I am a member of, as well as the Cherokee, to stimulate the circulatory system. And the way this is used is that they create a tea. So you take, during a certain season of the year, you would take the roots from elderberry and you would brew a tea. And you would drink this tea to boost to stimulate your circulatory system. The Cherokee, as well as the Huma tribe, also use the bark, the grayish bark from elderberry, to make a tea that has been used as a purgatory, right? So you would take it and it would work very similar to other types of syrups that you would take, such as, I don't know if you guys remember Ipecac back in the day. My grandmother used to make me drink Ipecac when I was a kid. If you've ingested something that just doesn't, it's really upsetting your stomach, you would ingest Ipecac, and in this case, the bark of the elderberry, to help bring that back up. It also helps with like other types of stomach issues as well. also traditionally the leaves prepared as a tea, but externally you would soak in the cold tea. This would be used to treat things such as burns or hives, rashes, other infections like that. But you could also make it as a compress. You could make a compress of the leaves, which is basically you macerate or grind up the leaves and soak them in water, put them in like a little cloth, and you put it on certain areas to help with swelling. So there are certainly different ways that you could prepare medicine from the roots, the bark, as well as the leaves of elderberry. In addition, the flowers, which is one of my personally favorite parts, because during the summertime, I love to make a simple syrup from the elderberry flowers. And the way you make this is you just put a cup of, a cup of sugar and your elderberry flowers and a little bit of water, and you let it get hot, and you soak your flowers in there for a little while, and then you kind of strain off the flowers, and you have this really awesome simple syrup that you can use to make lemonade, really great lemonade with flowers. Traditionally, the Lumbee tribe have used the flowers to as a diuretic to help you sweat, but also it helps to lower your fever because the flowers are anti-inflammatory. So in addition to helping lower your fever and having that diuretic effect of helping you sweat, it also helps to stimulate your circulatory system. And when taken in a large enough dose, again, obviously it's going to help you with having a laxative effect. This has been very popular in Western medicine as well as Western herbalism here in the United States for helping with colds and flu. So you see this a lot. Elderberry flowers being good for that. Now, let's talk about the berries. So here I have a picture. It's probably one of my favorite plant pictures, and this was taken by a friend of mine, Randy Bird, and this is a picture of Miss Idalis Jacobs. She is a member of the Coharie tribe, which I am also a part of. And Idalis has this, she is coming back from a trip with her grandfather down the Coharie River, and they have stumbled upon this huge treasure trove of elderberries. And so they're so super excited, and they found this big group of elderberries. I, on the other hand, when I was making my video, was not so lucky, unfortunately, but here they have found a great big mass of elderberries. So this is probably the most common way we find elderberries in the grocery store. You find it as a syrup, you can find it as a gummy, you can find it as pills, but the berries themselves have been used traditionally in Western medicine as well as within Native American populations to treat colds and flus. Within the Coharie tribe, they have a tradition of a really big food tradition with elderberries. They make wines and jams and jellies and pies. However, with the Waccamaw and the Lumbee also use them for making wine, jams, jellies, and pies, but we also use them for medicine for colds and flus. As a superfood, this plant is really wonderful. It is high in iron, has a lot of potassium, a lot of vitamin C. It also has antioxidants as well as anthocyanins and bioflavonoids and flavonolic compounds that are really good for helping to boost your immune system. And this is what we refer to as immunomodulators. And we're going to talk a little bit about immunomodulation and how elderberries work on your immune system and help you to fight infection in just 1 second. And before that, I do want to share with you a syrup making video and how you can make elderberry syrup at home for yourself and your family. Hey everybody, Tracie Locklear here from the North Carolina Native American Ethnobotany Project, and today we're going to be talking about making elderberry syrup. Now, elderberries are good all year long to help you boost your immune system, and I want to show you how you can easily make elderberry syrup at home. What we have here are black European dried elderberries that you can find at your local natural health food store. Dried elder flowers, also from your natural health food store. Ginger root, which I already have some peeled, you can find at your local grocery store. And this is going to give your syrup a little bit of a warm flavor, as well as it's also anti-inflammatory. We have some local honey, which I always believe in buying local, and honey is going to give your syrup a really good taste and help it go down better. This recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. And cloves are very warming and will give your elderberry syrup a little spice. And finally, we have just a little bit of bourbon that we're going to be using to preserve your syrup and give it a longer shelf life. So I have modified Rosemary Gladstar's elderberry syrup recipe from her book, Medicinal Herbs, and we're going to be combining 2 cups of dried elderberries to 4 cups of water, and we're going to put those in the pot and put it on a low boil. And we're going to set this on a low boil for about 20 minutes. So now we are going to grate our peeled ginger root. And we need about a tablespoon of grated ginger root for this recipe. Okay, looks like we have maybe good enough. And we're going to measure out how much we need of the grated ginger root. We need 1 tablespoon. So we're just going to scoop this up in here and pack it down. Make sure we have a tablespoon. And as soon as our elderberries finish boiling, we're going to strain them off and add our ginger root. Okay, looks like our elderberries boiled. It smells so good. All right, so now we are going to strain off the elderberries and add the ginger root to our syrup. So this is a tight woven piece of cotton that we're going to use to strain our elderberries. So now I've strained my elderberries, but you don't have to throw these away. You can always use them for making pancakes or muffins later. You can even roll them out and bake them, maybe make them into like a fruit roll-up or whatever you like. So we're going to squeeze this out. Make sure we get all the liquid out of it. Okay. Now we're going to add this back into our pot to finish boiling with the ginger root and the cloves. Now we're going to add our 1 tablespoon of ginger. And we're going to add our 4th teaspoon of cloves. And we're going to add our lid back on and let this boil for about 20 minutes to boil down the liquid to about half. Okay, so now we're going to do a little something different. We're going to take the elderberries from before. You don't have to do this step unless you're using the alcohol, because while we're waiting for our elderberry syrup to boil down to 2 cups, we're going to add our 1 cup of bourbon to our elderberries. And the reason I like to do it this way is that this way we can get the most nutrients out of the berries themselves. So while we're waiting for our elderberry syrup to reduce down to 2 cups, we're going to infuse our elderberries. So now that we've infused these elderberries with our bourbon, we're going to strain these elderberries again and add the infused liquid back into our pot. Okay. And this is going to give us a nice little additional flavor of the bourbon. It's going to help us preserve our medicine, and it is also going to draw out any additional nutrients. So we have one more infusion step before we strain the elderberry syrup and add our honey, and it's going to be adding the elderberry flower. So while the syrup is still hot, we've already added the bourbon. We're going to add the elderberry flowers. Okay, 1/8 cup of elderberry flowers. We're going to mix that together. Let's just spoon off. We're going to mix these in, and we're just going to let them infuse for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to strain our syrup and add our honey. So now we've let the elder flowers infuse in the syrup for about 20 minutes, and we're going to go ahead and strain those into our measuring cup. Okay, so now let me clean this area up a little bit so you can see what we're doing here. Now we're getting ready to add our honey. So now we have our honey. We have 1 cup of honey, as you can see. We started out with 4 cups of water. We're down to 3 cups now that we added the 1 cup of bourbon, and we're going to replace up to the 4th cup line with 1 cup of honey. We're going to mix this for a minute, and then we're going to pour it into our jars. Okay, so now it looks like this is about ready, and we're going to put it into our jars. And there you have it, elderberry syrup. Yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that little video. I am probably not as graceful in the kitchen as Rachel Ray, but don't tell me that. So yes, it's a little bit about how to make a medicinal syrup. That particular syrup was my own personal modification that I've been using for a couple of years, and it is based off Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herbs book. It's actually a really good, handy book. It's a beginner's guide. So on page 158 or so, there is an elderberry syrup recipe that you can make your own modification to and prepare for your family. However, within the slides, I have shared with you my recipe as well as the recipe of a really good friend of mine who is an herbalist as well, um, and a great herbalist. She has Kazimi Healing in Carrboro, and she has shared an elderberry syrup recipe. It's really simple. It's so delicious, and we have been sharing this recipe with our tribal communities and as well. So if you feel up for trying a new recipe, here is a great one to introduce to your family and to give away as potential Christmas presents as well. So hope you enjoy. Before I close, I do want to talk about COVID-19 and the use of elderberry. So I get a lot of questions about whether or not elderberry is good for COVID-19. And the answer to that is there are no dietary supplements or herbs that have been shown to be effective to fight COVID-19. As we know, this is not a flu. It is a coronavirus, which makes it more similar to the common cold. However, that being said, elderberry has been shown in clinical trials to fight both colds, the common cold, and flu. However, we have not seen any clinical trials demonstrating any benefit of elderberry specifically for the coronavirus. However, it does regulate your immune system. It helps to boost your white cell count, and also to just help keep your immune system going. There have been reports, people asking about a potential cytokine storm with elderberry, and this has not been shown. So just because the elderberry does boost your immune system, people worry about cytokine storm, but cytokine storm denotes something that would happen within the ICU whenever your immune system kind of goes into overdrive. And just because elderberry boosts your immune system doesn't mean that it's going to send your system into overdrive, and there's been no proof of that. So I do want to address that one thing. However, that being said, obviously use your best judgment and speak to your family care physician. In closing, I do want to say a special thank you to my community advisory board, as well as participating tribes that have been essential in helping us at the North Carolina Native American Ethnobotany Project in conducting our research, and that is the Wakamasuan tribe, the Halawasaponi, and my tribe, the Coharie tribe. I also want to thank our elder knowledge keepers. They have been so generous in sharing their knowledge regarding the use of several medicinal plants, not just elderberry, but I really want to say a special thank you to the elders in our tribe here in North Carolina, and thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear Beasley. And since we have a few minutes remaining, I wonder if we could ask a few questions from our chat. The first question deals with the recipe for the elderberry syrup. There is a question asking, is there something else that could be a substitute for the bourbon in that recipe?
In terms of alcohol, yeah, you can use glycerin. as well, but you don't have to use glycerin or bourbon. You can just use honey, um, and leave out the alcohol altogether. You don't need alcohol to make an effective elderberry syrup.
And could you talk a little bit more? You mentioned the importance of understanding how each part of the plant is used. Can you talk a little bit more about the teas and how those could be properly prepared?
Okay, so for the average person at home, I would recommend if you're making a tea, make a tea out of the flowers or the berries. Never eat fresh berries. They do have cyanoglycosides in them, so they can potentially make you nauseous. But if you cook them and you use them in your syrup or you use them in your tea, they're highly beneficial and very tasty. In terms of making a tea out of the leaves or the roots or the bark, I would not recommend that. Those parts of the plant contain a lot of CGs, those cyanoglycogens, glycosides, so I would not recommend doing that at home.
You spoke earlier about your grandmother and some of the remedies and recipes that she shared with you. And even though this particular program is about elderberries in particular, can you talk to us a little bit more about how remedies and medicinal practices or herbal practices are passed down from one generation to the next?
Oh my goodness, that is such a great question, and that could be a week-long segment. So my grandmother was an amazing woman. Both of my grandmothers were amazing. But my grandmother, Bossy Locklear, which is my dad's mom, because I grew up with my Lumbee family in Hope County, she was in her own right an herbalist, but she had a lot of little family recipes. She made a cold syrup out of a brown liquor. I don't know if it was bourbon or what it was exactly, and peppermint and onion and garlic and a host of stuff. So she shared that with my mom, who never actually shared it with me. So that was a problem. But I have since figured out like a couple of things that remind me of my grandmother's peppermint and bourbon and onion syrup, and I often use that as well. But my grandmother, I think the thing I most remember about her is whenever we would get sick, she would use castor oil and honey on us. And so if we ever like that was the one thing that my cousins and I we never did. We never faked sick. You did not fake sick with my grandmother because if you fake sick, you got castor oil and honey. And so that was the one thing that, we ever had anything wrong with us, she'd give us castor oil and honey, and we would sit on the couch and watch, um, soap operas, Bold and Beautiful or something while, our parents worked. So we do have a lot of history and stories like that, how to treat fevers and how to treat little colds and using Epsom salts and things like that for different aches and pains and infections. So yes, we have a few of those in our family, and hopefully you guys do at home too. You have to ask your relatives, ask your parents, your grandparents, your friends.
And we just answered the question about finding dry elderberries at health food stores,
Yes.
as well as various online retailers. One other question regarding elderberries. Earlier, someone mentioned the drying process. And maybe you spoke to that. But could you reiterate, the drying process? How do we use fresh or not use fresh elderberries versus the drying process?
Oh, sure. So if you're asking about the drying process, I have found that the fastest, best way to dry elderberries, if you're collecting them, obviously you want to rinse them, make sure they're clean, but use the air fryer. I love the air fryer. So you just put them in the elderberry. If you put your elderberries in the air fryer, you set it to like 135. It'll go for 6 to 8 hours. And whenever you're done, you'll have these really like small dry elderberries. And from that point, you can use them for a lot of different things. However, you don't necessarily need dry elderberries to make your syrup. You can use fresh elderberries to make your teas or to make your syrup. As long as you're cooking the elderberries, you're fine. You just don't want to ingest raw, um, fresh elderberries.
And I think with the 3 minutes we have left, in your estimation, what are some other natural remedies or plants that you would like the general public to be aware of in terms of medicinal purposes and healing properties?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, there's so many. But I think if I have to think of like my top favorites, I would say dandelion. Dandelion is so underestimated, and people are constantly spraying this weed that could be so beneficial. So please, please read about dandelion, learn about dandelion. Um, and let's see, black cherry is a really good one. Sage is a really good one. Sage is good for everything, antimicrobial, antibiotic. It's good for rubs, golden seal, goldenrod this time of year. There's so many really great plants out there. And a lot of them have been considered as just nuisances or weeds, and they're really not. Some of them, like violets, like the violets that you see growing in your lawn that people spray. They're so tasty in salads, and you will pay $20 for a salad with violets in it at any gourmet restaurant. So please take some time and investigate what you have growing in your own yard. I could not stress that enough.
Dr. Tracie Locklear Beasley, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all that wonderful information. There are so many other events that you all can join and watch today. Just go to our schedule or visit our schedule at NCAIHC.com. Thank you so much again, Dr. Locklear.
Thank you for having me.